I remember the exact moment the smell hit me, like a whisper of something forbidden, clinging to his shirt collar as he leaned in for a goodnight kiss. It was faint, but unmistakable. A floral note that wasn't mine, mixed with the sharp tang of his favorite cologne. That night, as I lay in bed pretending to sleep, my heart pounded with a quiet rage I'd never known before. How could he? After 20 years of building a life together, raising our 2 boys, scraping by on his mechanic's salary, and my part-time nursing shifts, how could Mark betray me like this? It started innocently enough, or so I told myself. I'd been folding laundry in our cramped laundry room, the dryer humming softly like an old friend, when I pulled out his work shirt. The fabric was stiff in places, as if starched, but then that scent wafted up. Not the grease and oil I was used to from his garage days, but something sweeter, more feminine. Perfume. I froze, my hands trembling just a bit as I held it to my nose. It wasn't overpowering, but it was there, mocking me. I tried to brush it off. Maybe a customer at the shop hugged him too close, or perhaps it was from the dry cleaners. But deep down, in that quiet place where wives know things without words, I felt the first crack in our foundation. The next few days blurred into a haze of suspicion. Mark came home later than usual, claiming overtime at the auto shop. He'd shower, immediately the steam filling our small bathroom with the scent of his cologne, that expensive bottle of Creed Aventus he'd splurged on for our anniversary last year. "Makes me feel like $1,000,000, honey," he'd said with a wink, spraying it liberally before heading out. But now, that smell turned my stomach. I'd watch him from the kitchen window as he backed out of the driveway in his truck, his phone glued to his ear, laughing in a way he hadn't with me in months. Our home in suburban Atlanta felt smaller then, the walls closing in with every unanswered question. The boys, Jake and Tommy, 14 and 12, were oblivious, chattering about school and video games over dinner. I'd force a smile, stirring the pot of chili on the stove, the spicy aroma filling the air as I asked Mark about his day. "Busy as hell," he'd mutter, avoiding my eyes, his fork scraping the plate like nails on a chalkboard. I wanted to scream, to demand the truth, but I held back. What if I was wrong? What if this was just midlife paranoia, the kind my sister warned me about after her own divorce? But then came the phone call that shattered any doubt. It was a Thursday evening, rain pattering against the windows like impatient fingers. Mark was in the shower, his phone buzzing on the nightstand. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it was wrong, but my hand moved on its own. A text from an unknown number. "Can't wait for tomorrow night. Wear that cologne I love. Xoxo." My vision blurred with hot tears, the screen glowing accusingly in the dim light. I set the phone down gently, my breath shallow, as if any noise might wake the beast inside me. That night, as he slept soundly, beside me, snoring softly with the blanket pulled up to his chin, I slipped out of bed. The floorboards creaked under my bare feet, cool and familiar, leading me to the bathroom cabinet where his cologne sat like a trophy. My fingers brushed the glass bottle, cold and smooth, and an idea formed, a clever, sticky revenge that would confirm everything and maybe, just maybe, give me back some control. Glue. Not just any glue, but a clear, odorless adhesive I'd mix into an empty bottle, mimicking his precious scent. He'd douse himself in it before his date, and panic would ensue. I could picture it, him fidgeting, realizing too late as things got. Complicated. It wasn't about cruelty, it was about truth, about reclaiming the dignity he'd stolen from me, one spray at a time. As I poured the real cologne down the sink, the fruity, woody note swirling away, I whispered to myself, "Let's see how your little secret holds up now, Mark." The first thing I noticed every morning, before my eyes even opened, was the smell of coffee drifting up the stairs like a warm hand on my shoulder. Mark had always been the early riser between us. He'd pad downstairs in his worn-out slippers, the ones with the hole in the left toe, and start the pot before I even thought about rolling out of bed. By the time I made it to the kitchen, he'd have 2 chipped mugs waiting on the counter, mine with a splash of milk and 2 sugars, his black as tar. He'd kiss my temple, the scratch of his stubble familiar against my skin, and say, "Mornin', beautiful," in that gravelly voice that still made my stomach flutter after all these years. Our house was small, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, the kind of place where you could hear the boys arguing over the Xbox from the laundry room. But it was ours. The living room walls were lined with photos. Jake's first Little League trophy, Tommy's gap-toothed kindergarten picture, Mark and me on our wedding day, both of us sunburned and grinning like fools. The couch sagged in the middle, where we'd spent countless nights watching reruns of The Office, his arm heavy across my shoulders, my head tucked under his chin. Even the kitchen table had history, scratches from Tommy's Hot Wheels, a faint burn mark from the time I'd set a hot pan down without a trivet. Every dent and stain told a story, and I loved them all. Mornings were our rhythm. I'd pack the boys' lunches while Mark fried eggs in the cast-iron skillet he'd inherited from his daddy. The sizzle of butter, the pop of toast springing. Up, Jake yelling from upstairs that he couldn't find his cleats. It was chaos, but the good kind. Mark would slide a plate in front of me, over easy just how I liked, and steal a bite of my bacon before I could protest. "Gotta keep the cook happy," he'd tease, and I'd swat his hand away, laughing despite myself. He worked long hours, at the shop, Green's Auto Repair, a squat brick building on the edge of town with a flickering neon sign. I'd drop by sometimes on my days off from the hospital, bringing him a sweet tea and a kiss through the rolled-down window of his truck. The guys would whistle and holler, and Mark would wave them off, but I could see the pride in his eyes. "That's my wife," he'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Best damn woman in Georgia." Evenings were quieter. After dinner, the boys would disappear to their rooms, Jake with his headphones blasting rap, Tommy building Lego cities that sprawled across the carpet. Mark and I would clean up together, a dance we'd perfected over the years. I'd wash, he'd dry, our hips bumping as we moved around the tiny kitchen. Sometimes he'd hum under his breath, an old Johnny Cash tune, off-key but earnest, and I'd join in, our voices blending in the steam from the sink. Bedtime was sacred. We'd crawl under the covers, the mattress dipping in all the familiar places, and talk about nothing and everything. He'd tell me about the customer who'd tried to pay with a jar of quarters, or the time Jake had snuck out to meet a girl and come home with grass stains on his jeans. I'd share stories from the ER, the elderly man who'd proposed to his nurse, the toddler who'd swallowed a Lego night. Mark would listen, really listen, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "You're a miracle worker, Lisa," he'd murmur, and I'd believe him. Saturdays were for errands. We'd pile into the truck, Mark driving, me in the passenger seat, the boys bickering in the back over who got the window. Grocery store first, then the hardware store for whatever project Mark had dreamed up that week. He was always fixing something. The leaky faucet, the creaky porch step, the neighbor's lawnmower. "Can't stand to see things broken," he'd say. And I'd watch him work, grease under his nails, sweat beading on his forehead, and feel a swell of love so fierce it hurt. Sundays were for church and family dinner at my sister's. Mark would wear his good button-down, the one I'd ironed the night before, and hold my hand during the sermon. Afterward, we'd drive to Denise's house, the boys already arguing over who got the last roll. The table would groan under platters of fried chicken, collards, macaroni and cheese thick enough to stand a spoon in. Mark would pile his plate high, then sneak seconds when he thought no one was looking. "Gotta keep my strength up for my girls," he'd wink, and my sister would roll her eyes, but she loved him too. That was our life. Simple, maybe, but solid. Built on 20 years of shared jokes and inside secrets, of scraped knees and hospital waiting rooms, of quiet mornings and louder nights. I never imagined it could crack. Not like this. There were little rituals that stitched our days together, threads so fine I barely noticed them until they started to fray. Every Tuesday night, Mark brought home a pizza from Gino's, half pepperoni for the boys, half mushroom and olive for us. He'd walk in with the box balanced on one hand, grease bleeding through the cardboard, and the whole house would smell like oregano and melted cheese for hours. We'd eat on paper plates in front of the TV, the boys sprawled on the carpet, Mark and I sharing the couch like teenagers. He'd nudge my foot with his, a silent, "I see you," and I'd nudge back. He still left notes in my purse sometimes, scribbled on the back of receipts, tucked beside my keys. "Don't work too hard, babe. Brought you a Snickers. Don't tell the boys." I'd find them mid-shift, when the fluorescent lights of the hospital felt too bright and the beeping monitors too loud, and my chest would unclench just a little. Once, after a 12-hour stretch where I'd held a stranger's hand while he coded, I opened my locker to find a single daisy taped to a post-it. "You're my hero." The flower wilted by morning, but I pressed it between the pages of my nursing textbook anyway. The boys worshipped him. Jake wanted to be a mechanic, just like Dad, spent weekends under the hood of Mark's old Chevy, handing him wrenches and asking 1,000 questions. Tommy was quieter, but he'd trail Mark around the yard like a shadow, helping carry the weed eater or holding the level while Mark hung shelves in the garage. Mark never rushed them, never raised his voice when they dropped a bolt or stripped a screw. "Mistakes are how you learn, bud," he'd say, ruffling their hair with greasy fingers. He was good with money, too. Better than me. I'd blow my tips on clearance racks at Target. Mark kept a spreadsheet. "College ain't cheap," he'd remind me gently, tapping the screen where 2 little funds grew, one for each boy. He'd taken on extra weekend jobs, tune-ups for neighbors, oil changes for the church van, just to pad those accounts. "They're gonna have choices we didn't," he'd say, and I'd nod, throat tight, because my own mama had cleaned houses so I could go to nursing school. Even our fights were gentle. We'd bicker over whose turn it was to take out the trash or whether the thermostat should stay at 72 or 74. Once, he forgot our anniversary, worked a double shift and came home with engine grime still under his nails. I'd spent the day simmering, lasagna cooling on the stove. When he walked in, eyes bloodshot, holding a wilted gas station rose, I wanted to stay mad. But he looked so defeated, shoulders slumped under his flannel shirt, that I just opened my arms. "Next year you're taking me dancing," I muttered into his neck, and he laughed, the sound rumbling against my cheek. "Deal, Lisa, deal." Sex was still good, quiet, familiar, but good. We'd wait until the boys were asleep, the house settling into its nighttime creaks. He'd kiss the scar on my hip from Tommy's emergency C-section, trace the stretch marks like they were road maps to everywhere we'd been. "Still the prettiest girl I ever saw," he'd whisper, and I'd believe him because his eyes didn't lie. Afterward, we'd lie tangled, his heartbeat steady under my ear, the ceiling fan clicking overhead. Safe. That's what it felt like. Safe. He coached Jake's rec league team on Thursdays, showed up in a whistle and a baseball cap pulled low, barking encouragement from the dugout. I'd sit in the bleachers with the other moms, sipping burnt concession stand coffee, cheering when Jake stole second. Mark would glance up between innings, find me in the crowd, and tip his cap, just for me. The boys called it Dad's cheesy move, but it made my chest warm every time. Even the hard days had rhythm. When the hospital was short-staffed and I came home with someone else's blood on my scrubs, Mark would draw me a bath, the bathroom mirror fogging with lavender steam. He'd sit on the closed toilet lid, rolling his sleeves, washing my hair with the same careful hands that rebuilt carburetors. "You carry the world, Lisa," he'd say. "Let me carry you for a minute." And I would, eyes closed, scalp tingling, tears mixing with the water because no one else saw me like that. Raw, exhausted, still worthy. That was the life we'd built, brick by ordinary brick. Nothing flashy but sturdy. I trusted it the way you trust the ground under your feet, until the ground started to shift, and I didn't even feel it at first. It started with the cologne, though I wouldn't let myself name it for weeks. Mark had worn the same scent for years, Old Spice when we were broke, then Axe when the boys thought it was cool, and finally that bottle of Creed Aventus he saved up for like it was a second mortgage. He'd spray it once on his neck, once on each wrist, the way the salesman at Nordstrom taught him. "Less is more, honey," he'd say, grinning in the mirror. The smell was sharp citrus over smoky wood, expensive and confident. It clung to his jackets, his pillow, the driver's seat of his truck. It was him. Then one Tuesday in late March, it changed. He came home from the shop later than usual, nearly 8:30, the pizza already cold in the box. I'd kept the boys fed and sent them to shower, saving him 2 slices under a paper towel. The front door creaked open, and I caught the scent before I saw him. The creed. Yes, but underneath it something cloying, almost syrupy. Floral, like the kind of perfume a woman wears when she wants to be noticed. I was at the sink, scrubbing burnt cheese off a plate, and my hands stilled under the hot water. "Hey, babe," he called, voice too bright. He dropped his keys in the ceramic bowl by the door. Clink, clink, then kicked off his boots. The smell followed him across the linoleum. I turned, drying my hands on the dish towel, and watched him peel off his flannel. The shirt underneath had a faint, rust-colored smudge near the collar. Lipstick? Grease? I couldn't tell under the kitchen light. "Long day?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Transmission job ran late. Guy swore it was just a flush. Turned out the whole pan was cracked. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes sliding past mine to the pizza. "Saved me any?" I nodded toward the counter. He grabbed a slice, folded it in half, and took a bite standing up. Crumbs fell onto his beard. I waited for him to kiss me hello. He always did, even when he was bone-tired. But he just leaned against the fridge, chewing, scrolling his phone with his free hand. That night he showered for 20 minutes. The water drummed hard like he was trying to scrub something off. When he finally came to bed, the floral note was gone, replaced by the sharp bite of Irish Spring and the Cologne again. Too much this time. It filled the room like fog. I lay on my side, pretending to read, but every breath tasted like betrayal. The next morning, I found the shirt in the hamper. The smudge was gone, washed out or maybe never there. I held the fabric to my nose anyway. Nothing but detergent and the ghost of his scent. I told myself I was being paranoid. Nurses see too many worst-case scenarios. It bleeds into real life. I folded the shirt neatly and buried it at the bottom of the basket. But the cologne kept showing up in new places. On the throw pillows in the living room. On the steering wheel when I borrowed his truck to pick Tommy up from practice. Once, on Jake's hoodie after Mark had given him a ride to school. "Dad let me drive the back roads," Jake bragged, and I smiled through clenched teeth while the smell curled in my nostrils. Mark started leaving the house early on Saturdays. Used to be he'd sleep till 9, then shuffle down in boxers for coffee and cartoons with Tommy. Now the bed was cold by 7, his side smoothed like he'd never been there. "Inventory at the shop," he'd say, kissing my forehead too quick. "Gotta get ahead before the weekend rush." I'd nod, but the shop didn't open till 9, and inventory was a Tuesday chore. His phone became an extension of his hand. He'd angle the screen away when I walked into the room, thumb flicking fast. Once, I reached for it to check the weather. Mine was dead, and he snatched it back like I'd asked for his social security number. "Battery's low," he muttered, but the battery icon was full. The boys noticed too, though they didn't have words for it. Jake asked why Dad missed his game last Thursday. Coach said he texted he was stuck at work. Tommy wanted to know if Dad was mad at him. He hadn't built the Lego Batmobile together in weeks. I smoothed their hair, told them Dad was just tired, and felt the lie settle heavy on my tongue. I started cataloging the changes the way I chart vitals at work. Quiet. Clinical, because if I let emotion in, I'd shatter. Cologne, heavier, layered with something sweet. Showers, longer, hotter. Door locked. Phone. Passcode changed, used to be our anniversary. Smiles. Fewer, and when they came, they didn't reach his eyes. One night I woke at 2:14 a.m. to an empty bed. The bathroom light glowed under the door, a thin blade of yellow. I heard the soft click of his phone camera. My bare feet were silent on the carpet as I crept closer. Through the crack, I saw him in the mirror, shirtless, hair damp, tilting his head to snap a selfie. He adjusted the angle twice, then typed something. The sending swoosh was soft, but it cracked through me like a gunshot. I slipped back to bed before he noticed, heart hammering so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. When he slid in beside me, he smelled like cologne and toothpaste and something I couldn't name. His breathing evened out fast, but I stared at the ceiling until dawn, the fan clicking like a countdown. I began to move through my days like a woman underwater, every sound muffled, every motion slow. The hospital corridors smelled of bleach and burnt coffee, the same as always, but now the scent made my stomach lurch. I smiled at patients, adjusted IVs, murmured, "You're doing great," while my own pulse felt erratic. At home, I cooked the same meals, meatloaf on Monday, tacos on Tuesday, but the spices tasted flat on my tongue. Even the boys' laughter, usually bright as bells, sounded distant, like it was coming from another house. Mark's absences carved new shapes into our routine. He started running to the parts store after dinner, returning with nothing but a vague, "They were out." Once he came back with a single spark plug wire still in its plastic sleeve. I held it up between two fingers. "This for the Chevy?" He blinked, then nodded too fast. "Yeah, preventative." The Chevy hadn't turned over in 2 years. It sat under a tarp in the side yard like a rusty monument. His clothes changed too. Subtle, but I noticed. New jeans, darker wash, slimmer cut, replacing the faded Levi's he'd worn since Obama's first term. A charcoal button-down I'd never seen, tags still dangling in the closet. When I asked where it came from, he shrugged. "Clearance rack at Kohl's. Thought I'd look less like a grease monkey for once." He said it with a laugh, but the laugh didn't land. I folded the shirt anyway, the fabric crisp under my palms, and felt the lie settle between the fibers. The cologne became my obsession. I'd stand in the bathroom after he left, uncapping the bottle, inhaling until my sinuses burned. The top notes were still citrus and pineapple, but underneath lurked that floral ghost, jasmine, maybe, or tuberose. Something a younger woman might wear. I started timing how long the scent lingered on his skin. 2 hours after a shower, it was gone, scrubbed away. 4 hours, faint but there. 6 hours, only on the collar of his jacket, as if he'd leaned too close to someone else. I began checking pockets. Not proud of it, but grief makes thieves of us all. A receipt from a coffee shop we never went to. 2 lattes, one with oat milk. A matchbook from a bar on the north side of town, the kind with live music and overpriced craft beer. Once, a business card wedged in his wallet. Kayla, event coordinator, with a cell phone scrawled in purple ink. I memorized the number, then slid the card back exactly as I'd found it, my fingerprint smudging the corner. Sleep abandoned me. I'd lie beside him, counting the rise and fall of his chest, waiting for the moment his breathing deepened. Then I'd ease out of bed, bare feet cold on the hardwood, and stand over his phone on the nightstand. The screen lock glowed. 0715, our wedding date still. I knew the code, but I never typed it. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Instead, I watched the preview bubbles flicker. A string of heart emojis from Greg, shop. Except Greg was a 60-year-old widower who texted in all caps and never used emojis. I took a photo of the screen with my own phone, the shutter sound deafening in the quiet. Mark stirred, murmured something, and I froze until his snoring resumed. The boys started asking questions I couldn't answer. Why's Dad always on his phone? Jake wanted to know, pushing peas around his plate. Is he sick? Tommy whispered one night, crawling into my bed after a nightmare. He looks tired all the time. I held Tommy close, his hair still damp from bath water, and promised everything was fine. The lie tasted like copper. I began timing Mark's showers with the stopwatch on my phone. 17 minutes, 22, once, 31. The water bill would be criminal, but I said nothing. I started doing laundry at odd hours, sniffing collars like a bloodhound. Most nights I found nothing. Some nights, the floral note bloomed faint but undeniable, mixed with the musk of someone else's skin. One Saturday, he said he was helping a buddy move. Rick's getting divorced, needs muscle. Rick had been single for a decade. I smiled, handed him a bottle of water, and watched him back out of the driveway. Then I followed, not close, 3 cars back, heart hammering so hard I thought I'd stroke out. He drove past Rick's street, past the highway ramp, into a part of town with new condos and valet parking. He pulled into a place called The Marigold, upscale apartments with a fountain out front. I idled across the street, half hidden by a delivery van, and watched him check his reflection in the rear view, smooth his hair, spray cologne from a travel atomizer he kept in the console. 2 spritzes, 3. Then he was out, stride confident, phone all ready to his ear. I didn't follow him inside. Couldn't. My hands shook too hard to grip the wheel. I drove home in a fog, ran 3 stop signs, and pulled into the garage, still trembling. The house felt cavernous without the boys. They were at a sleepover. I opened the fridge, stared at leftovers, closed it again. Then I went to the bathroom cabinet, unscrewed the creed, and poured half of it down the sink. The liquid swirled gold, then vanished. I stood there a long time, bottle in hand, listening to the drip-drip of the faucet. That night he came home smelling like her, and like him, the scents braided together. He kissed my cheek, said Rick's new place was real nice, and asked what was for dinner. I served spaghetti, twirled noodles around my fork, and tasted nothing. Suspicion calcified into certainty, slow and painful as a bone-healing wrong. I didn't cry, not yet. I was too busy planning. I waited until the house was asleep, the way a surgeon waits for the anesthesia to take hold. The boys were at my sister Denise's for the weekend, some cousin's birthday sleepover with too much cake and too many cousins. Mark thought I was asleep too. I'd kissed him goodnight, turned off my bedside lamp, and counted his breaths until they deepened into the soft whistle that meant he was out. Then I moved. The hallway was dark except for the sliver of streetlight leaking through the blinds, striping the carpet like prison bars. I stepped over the creaky board by Tommy's door, second from the left, and padded to the kitchen. My phone was already in my hand, volume off, screen dimmed to its lowest setting. I opened the Find My app, the one we'd set up years ago so I could track the boys' phones during school trips. Mark had never removed his account. His little blue dot pulsed 3 miles away in the same parking deck beneath the marigold. I stared at it until the screen timed out, then stared at the black reflection of my own face. My eyes looked hollow, cheeks sunken. I looked like a woman who'd been sick for months and hadn't noticed. I drove without music. The radio stayed off, the only sound the tick-tick of the turn signal and the low hum of the engine. It was past 11. The streets were mostly empty, just the occasional Uber weaving too fast through yellow lights. I parked 2 blocks from the marigold under a broken street lamp and walked the rest of the way in my sneakers. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of wet pavement and distant barbecue. My hands were steady now, nurse steady, the kind that can start an IV on a rolling vein in a moving ambulance. The lobby doors were glass, lit from within like a jewelry box. I didn't go in. Instead, I circled to the side entrance, the one residents used for dog walks and cigarette breaks. A couple came out laughing, the woman's heels clicking, the man's hand low on her back. They didn't see me pressed into the shadows beside the dumpster. When the door clicked shut behind them, I caught it with my foot and slipped inside. The hallway smelled of lemon cleaner and new paint. Music drifted from hidden speakers, some saxophone version of a song I used to love. I took the stairs to the 4th floor. The elevator dinged too loud. My legs burned by the time I reached 4C, but I welcomed the pain. It meant I was still alive, still moving. The peephole stared back at me like a black eye. I didn't knock. Instead, I stood to the side, back against the wall, and listened. Inside, low voices, a woman's laugh, light, tinkling, the kind that makes men stupid. Then Mark's voice, deeper, warmer than it had been at home in months. "Come here, you." A rustle. A soft moan. The unmistakable wet sound of kissing. My knees buckled. I caught myself on the railing, metal cold under my palm. The hallway tilted, then righted itself. I pressed my forehead to the cool wall and breathed through my mouth, slow and deliberate, the way I taught panicked patients. In 4, hold 4, out 4. Again, again. I took out my phone, opened the camera, switched to video. My thumb hovered over record, then pressed. I angled the lens toward the bottom gap of the door, just enough to catch sound, maybe a shadow. The laughing stopped. Footsteps. The door handle turned. I darted left into the stairwell alcove, heart slamming against my ribs. The door opened. Mark stepped out first, adjusting his collar. Behind him, a woman, young blonde, barefoot in a silk robe the color of ripe peaches. She reached for his belt. 5 more minutes, she whispered, playful. He laughed, caught her wrist, kissed her knuckles. Can't. Promised the wife I'd be home by midnight. The word wife hit me like a slap. He said it fondly, like I was a chore he still enjoyed. They kissed again, quick, practiced. Then he was striding toward the elevator, whistling. She closed the door softly. I waited until the elevator dinged, until his footsteps faded, then I crept back to 4C. My hand rose to knock, to pound, to scream, but I stopped. Not yet, evidence first, dignity later. I took the stairs down, slower this time, each step deliberate. In the parking deck I found his truck. Third level, nose in against the wall. The hood was still warm. I circled it once, twice, then opened the passenger door with the spare key I'd kept on my ring since the day he locked himself out in 2019. The cab smelled like him and her, cologne and peach body spray braided together. On the floor mat, a single rhinestone earring, cheap but shiny. I pocketed it. Back home, I sat in the dark kitchen with the earring on the table between us, like a tiny glittering accusation. The house ticked around me, fridge compressor, grandfather clock in the hall, the soft creak of the boys' empty beds. I opened my laptop, logged into our shared iCloud. His location history was a map of lies. The Marigold every Tuesday and Thursday, a motel off I-20 on random Fridays, a park-and-ride lot where teenagers made out and deals went down. I screenshot everything. At 12:47 a.m., headlights swept the driveway. Keys in the bowl, boots by the door. He crept past the kitchen, paused when he saw the glow of my screen. "Lisa," his voice was thick with fake sleep. "What are you doing up?" I closed the laptop, turned on the overhead light. The earring glinted between us like a fallen star. He froze. One boot still in his hand. His face went through stages, confusion, recognition, guilt, panic, all in the span of a heartbeat. "That's not mine?" I finished. My voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes after the storm has already torn the roof off. "No, it's not." He dropped the boot. It thuddled against the tile. "Lisa, I can explain." "Don't." I stood. The chair scraped back. "Don't you dare insult me with explanations I've already lived without for months." He took a step forward, hands open like I was a spooked horse. "It's not what you think. She's just Kayla, event coordinator, 27, lives in 4C at the Marigold, wears peach silk and too much perfume." I recited it like a chart note. "I followed you tonight, Mark. I stood outside her door and listened to you kiss her like you used to kiss me." His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. I picked up the earring, rolled it between my fingers. "You changed the passcode on your phone, but not the iCloud." "Rookie mistake." I slid a printout across the table. Location history, timestamps, the works. Every Tuesday, every Thursday, sometimes Fridays when you told me you were at the shop. He sank into the opposite chair like his legs had given out. The overhead light carved harsh shadows under his eyes. He looked older suddenly, smaller. "Lisa," he whispered, "I'm sorry. Sorry." The word hung in the air, thin and useless as tissue paper. I leaned forward. "Do the boys know their father is a liar?" His head snapped up. "No, God, no." "Please, then tomorrow night," I said, voice steady as steel. "You're going to wear your favorite cologne. And you're going to Kayla's, and I'm going to be there when it all falls apart." He stared at me like I'd spoken in tongues. "Lisa, what are you—" "Tomorrow," I repeated, softer now. "The way you talk to a patient who's about to get bad news. You're going to text her, tell her you can't wait to see her. Wear the creed, the good shirt, the one you bought at Kohl's." I tapped the printout. 8 o'clock. Same as always, he swallowed hard. The kitchen clock ticked loud between us. Tick, 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 like a bomb neither of us had built but both had to live with. "You want me to go to her?" "I want you to finish what you started," I said. "Only this time I'll be watching." His hands shook as he reached for the earring. I let him take it. The rhinestone looked cheap in his grease-stained fingers. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to stop asking why." I folded my arms. "Long enough to decide I deserved the truth served hot, not cold leftovers." He opened his mouth, closed it again. The silence stretched until it snapped. "It was stupid," he finally rasped. "A mistake. Midlife crisis. I don't even—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "I'm not your priest, Mark. I'm your wife. And right now I need you to listen." I told him the plan. Not all of it, just enough. He would shower, dress, spray the cologne like any other Tuesday. He would drive to the Marigold. He would park in the same deck, and when he stepped out of that truck, he would be wearing a scent that wasn't cologne at all. He laughed then, short, disbelieving. "You're going to, what, prank me? Like we're teenagers?" "No," I said. "I'm going to let the truth stick to you the way her perfume has been sticking to our life." His face crumpled. "Lisa, please. We can fix this. Counseling. I'll end it tonight. You'll end it tomorrow," I corrected. "On my terms. Or I walk into that shop Monday morning with these printouts and let every mechanic in a 10-mile radius know exactly what kind of man their boss is." "Your choice," he chose. Of course he did. Men like Mark, good men who do bad things, always choose the path that keeps the wreckage contained. He nodded slow like his neck had rusted. "Okay, tomorrow," I stood. "Sleep on the couch." "I don't want you in our bed tonight." He didn't argue. Just gathered a pillow and the Afghan my mama crocheted and shuffled to the living room like a man walking to his own funeral. I didn't sleep either. I sat at the kitchen table until the sky turned the color of weak tea, planning every detail the way I'd once planned birthday parties and vacation budgets. At 6 a.m., I drove to the hardware store. The clerk, a kid with a lip ring and a name tag that said Jaden, raised an eyebrow when I asked for clear-drying craft glue, the kind that bonds fabric and skin without a trace. "Cosplay project," I lied smoothly. He rang me up without question. Back home, Mark was already in the shower. I could hear the water running, steady and wasteful. I waited until it stopped, until I heard the blow-dryer whine, then slipped into the bathroom. Steam fogged the mirror. His cologne bottle sat on the counter, cap off, half empty. I unscrewed it carefully, poured the contents into the sink, gold liquid swirling down like liquid guilt. Then I filled it with the glue, drop by drop, until the level matched what had been there. I added a single drop of pineapple essential oil from my diffuser stash, close enough to pass a casual sniff. Not close enough to fool a nose pressed to his neck. I recapped it, wiped the bottle clean, and set it exactly where it had been. Then I waited. He emerged in a towel, hair damp, eyes red-rimmed. He didn't look at me as he dressed. New jeans, charcoal shirt, the one that made his shoulders look broader. He reached for the cologne without thinking, muscle memory guiding his hand. 2 spritzes on the neck, 1 on each wrist. He rubbed them together, inhaled, frowned slightly. Something off, but not enough to name. "Smells stronger today," he muttered. "Maybe you're just used to it," I said from the doorway. My voice was neutral, a nurse giving discharge instructions. "You look nice." He met my eyes then, searching for sarcasm, for mercy. "Found neither. Lisa, 8 o'clock, I reminded him. "Don't be late." The day crawled. I cleaned the house top to bottom, scrubbed counters until my knuckles bled, vacuumed under couches, wiped fingerprints from the fridge. Physical work kept the screaming at bay. The boys came home at 4, full of stories about laser tag and too much ice cream. I hugged them tight, breathed in their little boy smell, sweat and grape soda, and promised pancakes for dinner. Mark stayed in the garage, tinkering with nothing, the radio turned up loud to drown out whatever was in his head. At 7:15, he kissed the boys goodbye. "Gotta help Rick with his sink," he lied. Jake rolled his eyes. Dad's excuses were getting thin. Tommy just hugged his leg. I stood at the sink, rinsing plates, and didn't turn around. 42. His truck backed out. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. The Marigold's lobby was busier on a Saturday. Residents coming and going, a dog barking somewhere upstairs. I took the stairs again, slower this time, counting breaths. 4C. The door was cracked open, music drifting out, some R&B slow jam I didn't recognize. I slipped my phone from my pocket, started recording, and eased the door wider with my foot. Kayla answered in a red dress that clung like paint, hair curled, lips glossy. "You're early," she purred, reaching for him. Mark stepped inside, arms already around her waist. They kissed, hungry, familiar. She buried her face in his neck, inhaled. "God, you smell amazing." He laughed, the sound muffled against her hair. "New batch." They moved deeper into the apartment. I followed the sound of their voices, phone held low. The living room was all IKEA and fairy lights, a bottle of Prosecco sweating on the coffee table. Kayla poured 2 glasses, handed him one. "To us," she toasted. He clinked, drank. She set her glass down, reached for his shirt buttons. That's when it started. Mark shifted, scratched at his neck. "It's itchy," Kayla giggled. "New cologne rash?" He scratched harder. "Feels like, damn it." He tugged at his collar. The skin underneath was already pink, irritated. Kayla leaned in, sniffed, frowned. "Babe, it's sticky?" He lifted his wrist, rubbed it against his thumb. The skin pulled, tacky. "What the hell?" Kayla touched his neck. Her fingers came away glistening. "Mark, you're glued?" Panic flashed across his face. He bolted for the bathroom, Kayla on his heels. I stepped inside, closed the door softly behind me. The lock clicked. Mark was at the sink, scrubbing with soap, water splashing. "It won't come off. Lisa, what did you—" He saw me in the mirror. Froze. Soap dripped from his chin. Kayla turned, eyes wide. "Who are you?" "His wife," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Lisa Green. Nice to meet you, Kayla." She looked from me to Mark, back to me. "You're—" Joking. Mark's face was a mess, red welts rising where the glue had bonded skin to collar. His shirt was half unbuttoned, stuck in patches. "Lisa, please," I held up the phone. "Smile! You're on camera!" Kayla lunged for it. I stepped back. "Touch me, and this goes to your boss, your mom, your Instagram followers." "All 12,000 of them," she stopped. Mark was panting, trying to peel the fabric from his chest. It tore skin with it. He yelped. I turned to Kayla. "How old are you?" 27, she whispered. "I have a son almost half your age," I said. "He looks up to his father. Think about that." Mark was crying now. Quiet, ugly sobs. "I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." I looked at him, really looked. The man I'd loved for 20 years, reduced to a sticky, sobbing mess in a stranger's bathroom. My heart didn't break. It had already broken. This was just the cleanup. I stopped the recording. "Tomorrow," I told him, "you're telling the boys." "Then you're moving out. We'll figure out the rest with lawyers." I turned to Kayla. "Delete his number. Lose the apartment key. If I see you near my family again, this video goes viral." She nodded, tears streaking her mascara. I walked out. The door closed behind me with a soft, final click. I drove home with the windows down, letting the night air slap me awake. The glue bottle rattled in the cup holder like a tiny prisoner. My phone buzzed, Mark, over and over. I let it ring until voicemail swallowed the sound. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked smaller than I remembered, as if the walls had shrunk while I was gone. The porch light flickered, the one Mark kept promising to replace. I sat in the car until the engine ticked itself cool, then went inside. The kitchen still smelled faintly of garlic from the boys' pancakes. I opened the fridge, stared at the leftovers, closed it again. My hands needed something to do. I started with the cologne cabinet. Every bottle he'd ever owned lined up like soldiers. I poured them all down the sink. The Creed, the Old Spice, the cheap body spray Jake had given him for Father's Day. The scents mingled into something sour and final. I rinsed the bottles, crushed them in the recycling bin until the plastic cracked. Upstairs, I opened his closet. His work shirts hung in a neat row, sleeves aligned. I pulled one out, soft flannel, faded from 100 washes, and pressed it to my face. It still smelled like him, like sawdust and coffee and the life we'd built. I folded it carefully, set it on the bed. Then I took the rest, jeans, polos, the charcoal button-down, and dumped them into a black trash bag. The bag was heavy when I dragged it to the garage. I left it by the door with a post-it, pick up by noon or it goes to Goodwill, sleep didn't come. I sat on the couch with a cup of chamomile I didn't drink, replaying the bathroom scene on a loop. Mark's red welts, Kayla's smeared lipstick, the way his voice cracked when he said my name. I wasn't triumphant. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was hollowed out, a scooped pumpkin left too long on the porch. At 3:17 a.m., headlights swept the driveway again. Mark's truck. He didn't come inside. I watched through the blinds as he sat in the cab, head on the steering wheel. After 20 minutes, the engine started, and he backed out. I didn't follow this time. Morning came gray and drizzly. The boys stumbled down at 7, hair wild, eyes puffy from late-night Minecraft. "Where's Dad?" Jake asked around a yawn. Work emergency, I lied. The lie came easier now. He'll be back later. I made scrambled eggs, buttered toast, poured orange juice into plastic cups with cartoon dinosaurs. We ate in silence except for the clink of forks. Tommy kept looking at Mark's empty chair. I kissed the tops of their heads and sent them to brush teeth. Denise called at 9. You okay? The boys said Mark didn't come to the sleepover pickup. I need you to keep them one more night, I said. My voice sounded like someone else's, steady, flat. Lisa, talk to me. Later, I promised. Just keep them safe. I spent the day preparing. First, the lawyer, Marlene Jefferson, a nurse's college roommate turned family law shark. I emailed her the screenshots, the video, a timeline I'd typed at 4 a.m. She called back within the hour. Temporary separation, sole custody for now, freeze the joint accounts. We move fast, we move quiet. I signed the retainer with a stylus, my signature shaky but legible. Next, the bank. I transferred half the checking account into an account in my name only. The teller raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I withdrew $2,000 in cash, folded it into an envelope marked emergency. Then I changed every password: bank, email, Netflix, the stupid fantasy football league he played with the guys from the shop. At noon, the trash bag was gone. No note. I took that as compliance. Mark texted at 2:03 p.m. Can I come home? Please, I replied, garage. 3:30, bring your apology and your suitcase. He showed up at 3:27, eyes bloodshot, shirt wrinkled. The welts on his neck had scabbed into angry red lines. He carried a duffel and a look I'd never seen on him before, defeated, small. We stood by the workbench, the smell of motor oil thick between us. I ended it, he said. Blocked her number. Told her never to contact me again. Good, I said. Now tell the boys, he flinched. Lisa, they're kids. They're old enough to know their father's a liar. You don't get to protect them from the consequences of your choices. He nodded, slow. Where are they? Denise's. You'll pick them up at 6. You'll sit them down. You'll tell them the truth, age appropriate, but the truth. Then you'll pack a bag for a week and stay at the Motel 6 on Highway 20. I've already booked it. His shoulders sagged. How long? Until Marlene says otherwise. He reached for me. I stepped back. Don't, he dropped his hand. I love you, Lisa. I never stopped. You stopped acting like it, I said. Love is a verb, Mark. You forgot the tense. He left without another word. The garage door rumbled shut behind him. I stood in the sudden quiet, listening to the drip of a leaky faucet he'd never fixed. Then I went inside and started dinner for one. The next 48 hours passed like a fever dream, slow, hot, and disorienting. I kept the house on a schedule the way I kept patience on a drip, steady, measured, no surprises. Wake at 6, coffee black, shower with the door locked, dress in clothes that still smelled like my detergent, not his cologne. I drove the boys to school myself, radio off, windows cracked so the morning air could slap us awake. Jake stared out the window. Tommy asked once quietly, Is Dad sick? I told him Dad was working through some grown-up problems and would explain soon. Tommy nodded, trusting, and the trust felt like a knife between my ribs. At the hospital, I was a ghost in scrubs. I charted vitals, changed dressings, held the hand of a woman whose husband had walked out after 30 years. Men, she muttered, tears soaking the pillow. They think the grass is greener until they step in the manure. I laughed, sharp, surprised, and she squeezed my fingers. You'll be okay, honey. You're stronger than he ever was. I carried her words like a talisman. Evenings were the hardest. The house echoed without Mark's boots by the door, without his humming while he nuked leftovers. I cooked small portions, grilled cheese cut into triangles, tomato soup from a can. The boys picked at their plates. Jake asked if Dad was coming home for movie night. I said, Not tonight. Tommy fell asleep on the couch, clutching Mark's old baseball glove. I carried him to bed, tucked the glove under his pillow, and stood in the doorway until my legs cramped. Mark texted updates like a penitent schoolboy, picked up boys from Denise. Told them I'm staying at a hotel for work. They cried, dropped their favorite blankets at the motel. Jake won't speak to me, shop guys asking questions. Told them I'm renovating the house. Lame, I know, I didn't reply. Silence was its own language. On the third day, I took action that felt like surgery. Precise, irreversible. I called the shop. Greg answered, gruff as ever. Green's Auto, this is Greg. Greg, it's Lisa. A pause. Hey, darlin', Mark's in the bay. Put him on speaker. Everyone needs to hear this. I heard shuffling, the clank of tools, male voices fading. Then Mark, wary. Lisa. Tell them, I said. Tell them why you're not living at home. Silence thick as axle grease. Then halting, I messed up. Cheated on my wife. She found out. I'm out of the house until we figure things out. A chorus of murmurs. Someone whistled low. Greg cleared his throat. Jesus, Mark, I spoke into the void. I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for space. No more lies at work, no more covering for him. He owns this, Greg again. You got it, Lisa, whatever you need. I hung up before anyone could say sorry. That night, I changed the locks. The hardware store clerk, Jaden again, recognized me. Back for more glue? He teased. I managed to smile. Deadbolt this time. He didn't ask questions. Mark showed up at 8 with a pizza box and hope in his eyes. The new key didn't work. He knocked tentative. I opened the door on the chain. Boys are asleep, I said. I just want to talk. Talk through the mail slot. He crouched, slid an envelope through. Inside, a check for 2 months' mortgage, a handwritten letter folded so many times the creases were soft. Lisa, I keep replaying the moment you walked into that apartment. Your face, calm like you'd already buried me. I deserve it. I broke the one promise I swore I'd keep. The boys ask when I'm coming home. I don't have an answer. I'm seeing a counselor tomorrow, alone. I'll pay for whatever you and the kids need. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to know I'm trying to be the man you thought I was. Love, if you'll let me still sign it. Mark, I read it twice, then slipped it into the junk drawer with the takeout menus. Friday, I filed the separation papers. Marlene met me at a coffee shop that smelled of burnt espresso and lemon polish. She slid the folder across the table. Sign here, here, and initial there. He gets supervised visitation until the mediator says otherwise. I signed without hesitation. The pen felt heavier than any IV pole I'd ever pushed. That afternoon, I took the boys to the park. Jake kicked a soccer ball so hard it sailed into the creek. Tommy sat on the swings, barely moving. I pushed him gently, the chains creaking. Dad's sad, he said suddenly. I know, baby. Is it because of us? No. I crouched, met his eyes. Grown-ups make choices, sometimes bad ones. Dad's choice hurt me, not you. Never you. He nodded, but his lip trembled. I held him until the trembling stopped. Saturday, I boxed Mark's tools. The wrench set his daddy gave him. The impact driver he'd saved 6 months for. I labeled each box in black Sharpie, Mark, garage. Then I moved my nursing textbooks to the shelves he'd built, reclaiming the space inch by inch. Sunday, I cooked a full breakfast, bacon popping, biscuits rising, eggs fluffy. The boys ate like they hadn't in days. Jake asked if we could go to church. I said yes. We sat in our usual pew. The sermon was on forgiveness. I didn't cry. I just held their hands and felt the weight of new beginnings settling into my bones. Mark texted a photo. Him in a tiny motel room, counselor's business card on the nightstand. Session number 1 done. Hardest hour of my life, I typed back, keep going. Then I blocked his number for the night. I was done reacting. I was acting, deliberate, steady, like setting a broken bone so it heals straight. Word travels in a small town the way grease spreads on a shop floor. Quiet at first, then everywhere before you can wipe it up. By Monday morning, the story had legs. It started at Green's Auto Repair. Greg, loyal, gruff Greg, had taken my words to heart. When the crew gathered for coffee at 7, he laid it out plain. Mark's out of the house. Messed around on Lisa. She's got proof. We respect her space. We keep our mouths shut outside these walls, or you answer to me. The youngest mechanic, Tyler, opened his mouth to joke. Greg's glare shut it. Tools clanged louder than usual that day. Conversation clipped to torque specs and oil weights. By 9, the first text pinged my phone, heard from my cousin at the shop. I'm so sorry, Lisa. Then another. Praying for you and the boys. Let me know if you need meals. By noon, the casserole brigade had mobilized. 3 foil-covered dishes appeared on the porch. chicken spaghetti, king ranch, a broccoli cheese thing that smelled like Sunday school potlucks. Each came with a note in careful cursive, "You are loved. Call if you need anything." I carried them inside, lined them up on the counter like soldiers. The kindness stung worse than gossip would have. I wasn't ready to be the object of pity, but I wasn't cruel enough to refuse. I texted a group thank you, then turned my phone face down. The boys came home from school subdued. Jake's teacher had pulled him aside, "Just checking in, buddy," and word had trickled through the 8th grade grapevine. Tommy's best friend's mom had asked if he wanted to come over after school. Anytime. They didn't say much, just hovered near me while I reheated casserole. I let them pick the chicken spaghetti. It was Mark's favorite. The irony tasted like salt. At 6, Mark arrived for his first supervised visit. Marlene had arranged it at a neutral site, the community center's playground, public but contained. I drove the boys. He waited on a bench, hands clasped between his knees like a schoolboy in the principal's office. The welts on his neck had faded to faint pink crescents. He stood when he saw us, uncertain. "Daddy." Tommy ran first, arms wide. Mark caught him, buried his face in Tommy's hair. Jake hung back, hands in pockets. I nodded once, "Go on," and Jake shuffled over, let Mark hug him stiffly. The supervisor, a retired social worker named Mrs. Delgado, checked her watch and made notes on a clipboard. They played for an hour. Mark pushed Tommy on the swing, voice too loud with forced cheer. Jake kicked a soccer ball against the fence, harder each time. I sat on a bench 20 feet away, arms crossed, eyes tracking every movement. When Tommy fell and scraped his knee, Mark was there with a Band-Aid from his wallet before I could stand. The gesture was so familiar it hurt. At 7 sharp, Mrs. Delgado called time. Mark's face crumpled as the boys trudged to my car. He mouthed thank you over their heads. I didn't respond. That night the story cracked wider. Someone, Tyler probably, had talked. By 8, my sister called. It's on the PTA Facebook group. Sanitized, but still. Prayers for the Green family during a difficult season. I groaned. Delete me from that group. Already did, but Lisa, people are taking sides. Let them, I said. I'm not running for mayor. Tuesday, the shop's biggest client, a local contractor who fleet serviced 20 vans, pulled his business. Greg called me himself, said he can't trust a man who lies to his wife to be honest about breaks. I get it. Lost us $6,000 a month. I closed my eyes. I didn't ask for that. Didn't have to. Truth's got weight. Wednesday, Kayla's Instagram went private. Someone had screenshotted her stories. Mark's truck in the background of a coffee date, a hard eyes emoji over his blurry shoulder. The comments were brutal. Homewrecker. Classy. She posted a tear-streaked selfie. Hate isn't the answer. I'm human. Then deleted it. By evening, her employer, a boutique event company, let her go to avoid drama with clients. Thursday, Mark's mother called. I let it ring to voicemail. Her voice cracked through the speaker. Lisa, honey, whatever he did, he's still our boy. Can we talk? I deleted the message. Friday, the consequence landed closest to home. Jake's baseball coach benched him for the weekend tournament. Team morale, he said when I called. Parents are uncomfortable. Jake came home silent, cleats dangling from one hand. I held him while he cried into my shoulder, his body shaking with anger he didn't have words for. That night I sat the boys down. People are talking. Some of it's mean. None of it's your fault. We're going to hold our heads up, go to the game tomorrow, and cheer louder than anyone. Understand? They nodded. Tommy fell asleep clutching his baseball glove again. Mark texted, "Heard about Jake. I'll fix it," I replied. You can't. But you can show up Sunday with donuts and sit in the bleachers like every other dad. That's a start. The town kept talking, but the noise started to sound like background static. There, but not mine to carry. Sunday dawned bright and merciless. The kind of spring morning that makes you believe in fresh starts until you remember why you need one. I dressed the boys in their team jerseys, Jake's number 14, Tommy's too big hand-me-down with the sleeves rolled twice. I packed a cooler with Gatorade and orange slices, the way I had every Saturday for 6 seasons. We drove to the ball field in silence, except for the click of the turn signal. The parking lot was already half full, minivans and pickups forming crooked rows. Heads turned as we climbed out. A few moms offered tight smiles. Others looked away too fast. I felt the weight of their curiosity like humidity on my skin. Jake's shoulders hunched. I squeezed the back of his neck. Chin up, baby. We're here for you. Mark was waiting by the bleachers, 2 boxes of Shipley's donuts balanced on one palm, coffee tray in the other. He looked like he hadn't slept, eyes puffy, beard patchy where he'd missed spots shaving. The boys ran to him. Tommy hugged his legs. Jake took a donut without meeting his eyes. Mark's gaze found mine over their heads. I nodded once. Permission, not forgiveness. We took seats in the 3rd row, center field side. The coach spotted us, jaw tightening. He'd benched Jake, but the roster was set. He couldn't keep him out of the lineup entirely. Jake played left field, same as always. First inning, a fly ball sailed his way. He tracked it, glove up, and made the catch clean. The crowd cheered, polite, then louder when they realized who it was. Mark stood, clapping until his hands were red. I stayed seated, but my chest loosened a fraction. Between innings, the whispers floated up like gnats. That's her. The wife. Heard she glued him to his mistress. Literally. Poor kids. I kept my eyes on the field, spine straight, the way my mama taught me when bill collectors called. Dignity is armor, she'd say. Let them talk. Words can't dent steel. After the game, Jake's team won 8-4. Mark walked the boys to the car. He crouched to their level. I'm proud of you both. I'll be at every game I can, okay? Tommy nodded. Jake shrugged. Mark looked up at me. Can we talk? 5 minutes? I handed him the cooler. Walk me to the trash. We moved slow, gravel crunching under sneakers. When we were out of earshot, he spoke low. The contractor's not the only one. 2 more clients pulled out. Shop's bleeding money. I didn't ask you to lose your business, Mark. I know, but it's the consequence. I get that now. He shifted the cooler to his other hand. Kayla's moving. Back to Florida. Her parents are picking her up tomorrow. I nodded. Good. He hesitated. My mom wants to see the boys. She's ashamed of me. Won't stop crying. Let her cry. Then let her love her grandsons. That's between her and them. A silence stretched, filled by distant laughter and the slam of car doors. I started looking for an apartment, he said. Nothing fancy. 1 bedroom near the shop so I can still coach Tommy's t-ball. Send me the lease when it's signed. Marlene needs it for the paperwork. He swallowed. I hate this. So do I. We reached the trash cans. I took the cooler, tossed wrappers inside. When I turned back, he was staring at the ground. I keep thinking if I'd just not answered that first text, if I'd deleted the app. Stop. My voice was gentle but firm. Regret is a luxury we don't have right now. The boys need stability. I need space. You need to keep showing up, clean, sober, honest. That's the job, he nodded, eyes wet. Yes, ma'am. Back at the car, the boys were buckled in, arguing over who got the last powdered donut. Mark handed it to Tommy, ruffled Jake's hair. See you Wednesday, he promised. They waved as we pulled away. In the rear view, he stood alone in the emptying lot, shrinking smaller and smaller until the mirror swallowed him. That night, the casserole count hit 7. I froze what we couldn't eat and dropped the rest at the women's shelter downtown. The director hugged me. Heard what you did. Takes guts, I shrugged. Takes casseroles, apparently. Monday, the shop posted a sign. Under new management, same great service. Greg had bought Mark out. Fair price, quick closing. Mark signed the papers in Marlene's office, hands steady. He texted a photo of the sold sticker on his toolbox. Moving on, literally. I didn't reply. Tuesday, Kayla's moving truck idled outside the Marigold. I drove past on my way to pick up Tommy from school. She was loading boxes, hair in a messy bun, no makeup. Our eyes met through the windshield. She looked away first. By week's end, the town had moved on to the next drama. A church secretary caught stealing from the offering plate. Our story faded to background noise, the way storms do once the power's back on. People still nodded at me in the grocery store, but the stares were softer now. Curiosity satisfied. Justice served, small-town style. Mark kept showing up. Wednesday pickup, Saturday practice, Sunday donuts. He didn't miss. The boys started smiling again, small, cautious smiles, but real. I let them. The consequences weren't fireworks. They were slow, steady pressure, money tighter, reputations dented, routines rewritten. But they were ours to carry now, not secrets to hide. And that felt like justice. The first morning I woke without dread was a Tuesday in late May, 3 months after the glue. Sunlight slid through the blinds in clean stripes across the quilt. The house was quiet. No boots by the door, no phone buzzing with lies. Just the soft tick of the grandfather clock and the low hum of the fridge. I lay there a moment, listening to my own breathing, and realized the knot in my chest had loosened. Not gone. Some knots take years to untie, but slack enough to move. I started small. A new coffee mug, bright yellow, no chips, bought for myself at Target with a gift card Denise had slipped into my Easter basket. I brewed a full pot instead of half, poured it steaming into the mug, and drank it on the porch while dew still clung to the grass. The neighbor's sprinkler hissed across the street. A cardinal called from the oak. Ordinary sounds, but they felt like music. The boys noticed the shift. Jake asked if he could try out for travel soccer, something Mark had always said was too expensive. I ran the numbers, moved money from the emergency envelope, and said yes. Tommy wanted a haircut, like the cool kids, so I took him to the barber instead of cutting it myself with kitchen scissors. He came out grinning, spikes gelled high, looking every bit the 12-year-old he was becoming. I reclaimed the house room by room. The garage shelves, once Mark's domain, now held my nursing books. A sewing machine I'd bought on sale, bins of Legos sorted by color. I painted the laundry room a soft sage, the color of new leaves. Every stroke of the roller felt like wiping a slate clean. When the boys asked why, I told them, because we're growing new things here. Mark moved into a one-bedroom above the hardware store. He sent photos, a sagging couch from Craigslist, a card table for dining, a twin bed with sheets still in plastic. He'd hung the boys' school pictures on the wall with blue painter's tape. Home sweet home, he captioned. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. Visitations settled into rhythm. Wednesdays he picked them up from school, took them for burgers, helped with homework at the library. Saturdays he coached Tommy's t-ball, stood on the sideline in a whistle and a smile that looked almost real. Sundays he brought donuts and stayed for an hour, never longer, never pushing. The boys started calling his place Dad's apartment instead of the motel. Progress. I started running. 3 miles at dawn, sneakers slapping pavement, earbuds in with podcasts about finance and forgiveness. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the rhythm steadied me. One morning I passed the shop, Green's Auto Repair, new sign gleaming, and saw Greg wave from the bay. I waved back. The world kept turning. Finances were tight but manageable. Marlene negotiated child support and a clean split of assets. The house stayed mine. Mark kept the business proceeds. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital, trained for charge nurse. My first paycheck in the new role bought the boys new cleats and paid the electric bill with change left over. I framed the stub and hung it in the laundry room next to the paint swatches. Denise hosted Sunday dinners again. Mark came once, sat at the opposite end of the table, passed the rolls without being asked. The boys chattered over mashed potatoes. My sister watched us like a hawk. When Mark left, she hugged me hard. You're doing it, Lise. You're really doing it. I joined a divorce care group at the community center. 8 women, 1 widower, all carrying different flavors of grief. We met Thursday nights in a circle of folding chairs, coffee stale, tissues plentiful. I told my glue story. They laughed until they cried. One woman, Marla, had burned her ex's vinyl collection in the driveway. Should have used lighter fluid, she said. Took forever. We became Tuesday lunch friends. Salads at the diner, no talk of men unless we wanted to. Sleep came easier. I stopped checking the doors twice. Dreams shifted from courtroom battles to quiet fields I didn't recognize. I bought lavender lotion, rubbed it into my wrists before bed, and woke without the scent of betrayal in my nose. One Saturday in June, Mark asked if he could fix the porch step, the one that had squeaked since Tommy was in diapers. I said yes. He showed up with his old toolbox, the one I'd boxed for him, and worked in silence while the boys handed him nails. When he finished, he tested the step with his full weight. Solid. Good as new, he said. I nodded. Thank you. That night I sat on the mended step with a glass of sweet tea, watching fireflies blink across the yard. The air smelled of cut grass and distant rain. I felt the boards beneath me, firm, unyielding, and realized I felt the same. Healing wasn't a lightning strike. It was this: one steady step, one fixed board, one yellow mug at a time. July slipped in hot and humming, the kind of Georgia heat that makes the air shimmer above the asphalt. I bought a window unit for the boys' room, second-hand, but it rattled like a loyal dog and kept them cool enough to sleep. Jake made the travel soccer team. We celebrated with ice cream sundaes at the Dairy Queen, hot fudge dripping down the sides of plastic cups. Tommy lost his first tooth to a caramel apple and tucked the gap-toothed grin under his pillow for the tooth fairy. I left a crisp $5 bill and a note in my best fairy cursive. He believed it for one more summer. Mark's apartment filled out slowly. He sent pictures: a second-hand recliner the color of wet sand, a tiny kitchen table with 3 mismatched chairs, a shelf for the boys' artwork. He'd framed Jake's team photo and Tommy's finger paint masterpiece side by side. "Looks like a home now," he wrote. I saved the photo but didn't reply. Some bridges need time to cure before you walk them. We settled into a new custody rhythm. Mark kept Wednesdays and every other weekend. I used my free Saturdays for myself. Farmer's market at dawn. Peaches so ripe the juice ran down my wrists. Long runs that ended with iced coffee and a bench by the creek. Thrift store hunts for picture frames and throw pillows in colors Mark had never liked. I hung a gallery wall in the hallway, photos of the boys at every age, my nursing school graduation, Denise and me at the beach the summer before kids. No wedding pictures, not yet. Maybe never. The hospital promoted me to charge nurse. The raise came with a badge clip that read, "Lisa Green, RN, charge" in bold letters. I wore it like armor. My first night in the role, a code blue rolled in. Elderly man, cardiac arrest. I ran the room, compressions, meds, shocks, calm voice cutting through chaos. We got him back. His daughter hugged me in the hallway, tears soaking my scrubs. "You saved my dad." I thought of my own father, gone 10 years now, and felt the circle close. Mark started therapy twice a week. He didn't tell me. The boys did. "Dad says he's learning to be a better listener," Jake reported, rolling his eyes like it was homework. Tommy added, "He cries sometimes, but he says it's okay for boys to cry." I nodded, throat tight, and made extra pancakes. One Friday in August, Mark asked if he could take the boys school shopping. I said yes. They came home with new sneakers, backpacks, and a story. Dad had let them pick out their own lunch boxes, Jake's black with tiny skulls, Tommy's covered in cartoon tacos. Mark lingered on the porch afterward, shifting weight from foot to foot. I found this." He held out a small wooden box, lid carved with tiny flowers. Inside, the rhinestone earring from Kayla's apartment, cleaned and shining. "Thought you might want to decide what to do with it." I took the box, closed the lid. "Trash," I said. He nodded, no argument. Fall brought Friday night lights. Jake's team played under the stadium glow, and I sat in the bleachers with Denise, sharing a blanket against the first cool snap. Mark sat 3 rows up with the other dads, cheering every goal. When Jake scored the game winner, we both stood, me screaming, Mark pumping a fist. Our eyes met across the crowd. He smiled, small and genuine. I smiled back before I could stop myself. The moment passed, but it lingered like wood smoke. I started dating my calendar. Coffee with a radiology tech who made me laugh until my sides hurt. A blind date set up by Marla. Nice guy. Dull spark. I didn't kiss either of them. I wasn't ready, and that was okay. I bought myself flowers every payday. Sunflowers, daisies, whatever was bright, and arranged them in the yellow mug on the kitchen table. Thanksgiving was the first test. Denise insisted on hosting one big table, no drama. Mark arrived with a pecan pie and a bottle of sparkling cider. We carved the turkey at opposite ends, passed rolls like civilized strangers. The boys told stories about school. Denise's husband cracked dad jokes. When Mark reached for the gravy at the same time I did, our fingers brushed. Neither of us flinched. After dinner, he helped with dishes without being asked. I let him. December brought Christmas lights and custody schedules. We agreed on split holidays. Boys with me for Christmas Eve, Mark for morning. I decorated the tree alone, strings of lights tangled like old memories. The boys hung their ornaments, popsicle stick reindeer, ceramic handprints. I added a new one, a tiny nurse in scrubs, stethoscope around her neck. For Mama, the tag read in Tommy's careful print. On New Year's Eve, I sat on the porch with a mug of cocoa, watching fireworks bloom over the neighbor's roof. My phone buzzed. "Mark, happy almost New Year. Thank you for letting me be their dad." I typed back. "Thank you for showing up." I hit send, then turned the phone face down. The sky cracked open in gold and red. I didn't make resolutions. I just breathed. Healing wasn't a destination. It was the quiet click of a porch step that no longer squeaked, the smell of coffee in a yellow mug, the sound of my boys laughing in the next room. It was choosing, every day, to keep walking forward, even when the road curved in ways I never expected. I never thought I'd sit here, years later, telling this story without my hands shaking. But here I am. On the same porch step Mark fixed all those summers ago, the wood worn smooth now by sneakers and bare feet and the occasional delivery box. The boys are teenagers. Jake's learning to drive, Tommy's voice cracking mid-sentence, and the house smells like pizza and teenage cologne instead of betrayal. The yellow mug still sits on the kitchen counter, chipped now from 1,000 mornings, but I refuse to replace it. Some things earn their cracks. I kept the rhinestone earring. Not for sentiment, Lord, no, but because it reminds me how far I've come. It lives in a tiny drawer with the boys' first teeth and a pressed daisy from my mama's funeral. A museum of hard-won lessons. Mark and I never got back together. Some breaks are clean for a reason. But we learned a new dance, co-parents, friends on good days, civil on the bad ones. He's remarried now to a quiet woman who teaches 3rd grade and makes Tommy's favorite lasagna. I danced at their wedding, slow and careful, in a dress the color of sunrise. The boys stood between us, grinning like they'd won the lottery. I'm not angry anymore. Anger is a fire that warms you for a minute and burns the house down if you feed it too long. I chose to rebuild instead. So here's what I know, spoken soft into the night air like a secret I'm finally ready to share. You can glue a man to his mistakes, but you can't glue yourself to his shame. The real revenge was never the prank. It was the morning I woke up and chose me. The real healing was every casserole I froze for someone else, every mile I ran at dawn, every time I said yes to the boys when my heart wanted to say not yet. If you're listening tonight, carrying your own sticky mess, whether it's betrayal or grief or a choice you can't unmake, hear this. You are not the worst thing that happened to you. You are the next breath you take, the next step you choose, the next sunrise you decide to meet with your chin up. Would you have swapped the cologne? Or would you have walked away sooner? Tell me in the comments. And if this story helped you even a little, hit that subscribe button. We're all healing together, one quiet morning at a time.